This man suddenly found a way to make easy money, as long as he pretends to be blind. Not only can he sit in front of the temple and beg openly, his daily income is even 3 times that of other people. Even when he crosses the street, there are kind people to help him. He can even live in a government supplied room for free as a blind man. But this is not the limit of a man. He also uses his status as a pianist to play the piano in other people's homes, because no one would guard against a blind man, so he could often peep into the privacy of many hostesses. But what he didn't know was that being blind would be his greatest regret. That day he went to celebrate the birthday of a rich man's wife as usual. When he opens the door, the woman doesn't seem to want to let him in, and claims that he may have misremembered the time. But David had taken a deposit from the tycoon, and there's going to be a hefty final payment when the show is over. Of course he couldn't have gotten it wrong. While they were arguing, the noise attracted the attention of the old neighbor woman. The woman didn't seem to want to attract the neighbor's attention, so she had to let him in. After ascertaining that David was truly blind, the woman was relieved to let him play the piano. However, not long after he had played, he was startled by the scene in front of him. There was a dead body lying in the living room in front of him. He finally realized why the woman didn't want to let him in, but at this moment, he couldn't show his nervousness. He could only excuse himself to go to the bathroom to use the toilet. When he passed the living room, he stepped on the red wine on the floor to make himself look more like a blind man. He thought that going to the bathroom would calm him down, but he didn't realize that this was the scariest part, because the murderer was hiding behind him with a gun. He was so scared that he didn't dare to breathe for fear that he would be silenced if he found out what happened. Luckily, he held his urine long enough not to arouse his suspicion. When he went back to the living room, he saw the tycoon himself lying on the floor. Although he was very scared at that moment, he could only pretend to be calm and continue playing the piano. The woman beside him was pretending to contact the tycoon. She said the tycoon would be here in 10 minutes. Then they disposed of his body in front of David. It wasn't long before the men were loading the body into a suitcase. They were going to drag the body out and destroy it. The tycoon's wife, Simi, went to the door to create the illusion of welcoming the tycoon home. Then Simi took out a recording of the tycoon's life and pretended to be talking to her husband in front of David. But before she could say a few words, she made up an excuse that the tycoon had to go out for a while. And the man put on the tycoon's clothes and dragged his luggage out of the house. After leaving the tycoon's house, David didn't go home. He sat on the side of the road and hesitated to call the police, because the tycoon is not only a famous local benefactor, but also gives him a lot of tips every time he visits the bar where he sings. He didn't realize that yesterday he was laughing and joking with the rich man, but today he was murdered by his own wife. Perhaps God had shown him the way. The words of the woman next to him made him decide. After picking the ticket, David made up his mind to go to the police station to seek justice for the rich man. When he arrived at the police station, David told the police that he wanted to report a murder case, but as soon as he said that, he saw the man hiding in the bathroom, and he was wearing a police uniform. He was also a police sergeant. David was very nervous and didn't know how to explain. He quickly explained that his cat had been killed, but the sheriff obviously didn't believe this explanation. The sheriff had just killed the rich man, and the only blind man on the scene came to the police. This made him suspect that the blind man was faking it. In order to verify his suspicions, the sheriff immediately decided to drive him home himself. However, upon entering the door, the sheriff found the day's newspaper on the table. David had to say that it was for cat poop. The sheriff was obviously not convinced. He then tried all sorts of things on David.